So boom. So the prosecutor in this case said that mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. I want that to sink in for a bit. In less than 3 hours, a jury decided that Karmelo Anthony was guilty of murder for the stabbing, unaliving of Austin Metcalf at a track meet in April of 2025. Additionally, the same jury came back in less than 3 hours and decided that Karmelo Anthony should spend 35 years in prison for this incident. Now in Collin County, Karmelo Anthony will have to complete at least half of his time before he is eligible for parole. It is not lost on very many people that the halfway mark is roughly around 17 some years, like 17 and a half years, which is roughly the same age that these two young men were when this incident occurred.
On down and treat this like a podcast episode because I have some thoughts regarding the verdict and the Karmelo Anthony case. I saw this bullshit on the Twitter and I'm like, how is you cool? Are you dumb? That's my immediate thought was, are you dumb? This wasn't a fucking mistake. He sat in a tent of a school he didn't even go to. He brought a weapon on school premises. He was told to leave multiple times. 21 people witnessed and testified that he agitated the entire situation. He provoked the entire situation. He was the aggressor. How was this a fucking mistake? This wasn't a hand-to-hand fight and Austin fell back, hit his head and died. That's a mistake. He reached in his bag and stabbed that kid in the heart. How is that a fucking mistake? How y'all raise your kids right? Because Karmelo Anthony is just one of millions of examples that I've seen on social media of how little black kids act like they have this sense of entitlement of taking up spaces that they do not belong in, walking around with no sense of accountability, responsibility, or consequences. He is being punished for the consequences of his actions. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't vandalism. This wasn't robbery. He took a child's life. And for y'all to sit there and talk about, oh, this is racism, this is white supremacy, and that's the problem. Our kids can't make a mistake. Wow.
Questions and interest about the Karmelo Anthony trial. I really haven't talked about it much because candidly I hadn't really followed the Karmelo Anthony trial and find it kind of weird to give some type of commentary and things about a case that I have not followed and do not know the background and facts about. But anyway, Karmelo Anthony followed the trial. Young man who is accused of stabbing another person at a track meet, and his defense was that of self-defense, saying that he had to do it because the other person was of a larger size than him. Two things. One, people still misconstrue self-defense. In self-defense, it is what's called an affirmative defense. And really, technically, it should be hard in a way to lose self-defense cases in a way. Because what ends up happening is the law says, once the defense raises credibly that it could be self-defense, once they raise credibly that it could be self-defense, it switches. It becomes incumbent on the prosecution to prove that it can't be self-defense, and they must prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And so the theory is the state puts on their case, the defense raises self-defense, and if the prosecution doesn't say anything else, how in the world could they disprove that it wasn't self-defense? That is one. The other thing from reading some of the Karmelo Anthony trial, and again, you can read this stuff all you want, unless you're in trial and watching what other people do. People are saying that the lawyers did or did not do. Reading doesn't really give the full context. But one of the things I did find interesting is that the prosecution asked almost every one of their witnesses, do you believe that this was self-defense? Do you believe that this was self-defense? And you didn't hear a lot of objections to that. And I don't know how Texas works, but in the majority of the states, you are not allowed to ask that question of lay witnesses because it calls for an expert opinion. And it also goes to the penultimate issue. It is the jury who makes the decision if something is self-defense. It is the jury who makes the decision. And so the jury makes that decision. So I thought it was kind of weird that the judge, or maybe the lawyers, I don't know, asking a lay witness, in some situations, high school kid, do you believe that this was self-defense? No, I don't. Well, that's not your call to make. So I thought that was a weird question allowed to be asked. So people are asking, could this create an appellate issue? And that goes to number 3. The reason that this will be a weird appellate issue from what I've read is, to be an appellate issue, there must be an objection. So meaning, let's say for argument's sake, the question is asked. You, lay witness, do you believe that this was self-defense? At that point in time, the defense must say, we object. We think that is an impermissible question. If the judge allows that question to be asked, then it is what's called protected for an appeal. If there's not an objection, there's nothing to protect for appeal, and there's nothing to appeal. But again, don't know much about it. I just know what I have read, and those are the 3 things that jump out to me. Probably going to do that live tomorrow. So tomorrow after work, after hours, we'll do live so everybody can dog cuss me then or in the comments.
We want to be mad. I know we want to hoot and holler, but let's make sure we be mad and hoot and holler at the right person, okay? I'm just going to rapid fire some fun facts. 1, the prosecution called 21 witnesses, 20 or 21. 2, the defense called 6 witnesses. 3, Karmelo Anthony did not take the stand. 4, there were 3 questions that the defense was expected to answer in order for Karmelo to get a lesser charge. A, why he had the knife at the track meet. B, what were the circumstances that led to the altercation. C, was the force that Karmelo Anthony used justifiable based on the circumstances that led to the altercation? Lord, I done lost track of the numbers from part A, B, and C. I think we on 4. The defense literally got up in front of one of their witnesses and said, you know, I only spoke to you 2 minutes in the hallway last week. We've never spoken before that. 5, the prosecution got up on cross for that same witness and said, well, you know, you and I have talked and we've discussed things, and I was just texting your parents last week, showing that the prosecution had an established ongoing relationship with one of the defendant's witnesses. Now, based on all of the things you just heard, do you think the jury was wrong for coming to the conclusion that they came to based on what they were presented with? And remember those 3 questions. The defense did not answer any of those questions. Let's make sure we place our anger in the right area.
This is what they sentenced Karmelo Anthony for after they found him guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf. I had to step back in my car to record. For those of you who don't know, I am outside the courthouse right now. And this is shortly after they have sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years in prison.
This is the best advice that I'm going to give to my people. Look, the main thing that we all should be doing right now is being fucking successful. That shit is the cure to everything. That's what they hate. They don't want to see you successful. They don't want to see you with the big ass house next to them. They don't want to see you in that position. So the best thing to do is be successful. Pass those classes. Be the smartest. Do the math. Be the best reader. Do whatever sport you do. Be the best chess player. Be the best at what you're doing. Finish. Don't quit. That's the best advice I can give you right now. Have all your paperwork straight. Be on point. They don't like that shit. They don't expect that shit from us. They hate that. The more on point you are, the fucking better. Cops pull you over, ID, registration. Be on point, right? Be better than what motherfuckers expect. Be the example. I'm telling you. That shit feels so good, being on point, having good fucking credit card here, boom. I'm telling you. Go get the shit that they wish they can get. You understand what I'm saying?